So I'm sitting in the park with Doug Sembruzi, who's Associate Minister at Roheath Pavilion Church. Doug, you are on the staff of the church here. It's a predominantly Anglo-Saxon church, if you like, white church, predominantly white neighbourhood. What's been your experience of working on the staff here?
My experience within Roheath Pavilion Church has been overwhelmingly welcoming. In fact, I can't think of a time when race was a big factor in the decisions that were being made about my ministry. Truth is, my experience within Roheath Pavilion Church has been very, very positive. I come from Uganda, where the culture is very different from Bonneville. Actually, I came to know about the church through the college, which is for mission, where I was doing my master's in missional leadership. Growing up in Uganda, educated within the Ugandan culture, my learning information helped me understand how can I be helpful in ministry in a Western context when I have my cultural bias, actually having grown up in Uganda. And I think the college helped me grapple with some of the missional dynamics of serving in this context.
But thinking about your experiences in this country, just generally, you must have encountered some racism, or would you explain that?
Actually, I remember when I first came to this country, I went to Liverpool. And in Liverpool, I was serving there, teaching dance and music to young people to help them get off drugs, get off the streets. That was the year just after Rhys Jones was murdered in Liverpool, and there were riots in this place. And in fact, before I stepped into the country, one of my leaders in Uganda said, "You're going to Liverpool? Haven't you seen what's happening on the news, the riots? Are you sure your color won't be a factor?" And I thought, actually, I'm going as a missionary. And when you go as a missionary, it feels like color then is not a factor, because there is another dimension, which is faith and the call of God, which is no respecter of color and of background. God says, all nations, go to all nations. So I felt like my time had come to come here. But one instance on the streets, when I was going to teach dance to young people, I saw two schoolgirls walk towards me. As they came near me, they spat on the ground and crossed the road, looking at me, giving me evils. It was a sad moment. I was like, okay, because you don't choose the color that you are born. You don't choose the country that you're born in. So you feel helpless. What is funny is, by the time I finished the year in that community, those girls were part of the dance group that I was working with. Not taking that personal protected me, in that then some of the kids who had been horrible to me later on were like, "Doug, we don't need to leave this community because you've helped us be part of dance, be part of music." So yes, racism is real, but we're bigger than the framing that people give us.
So thinking about the wider fellowship, FCC,
Yeah.
what's your observation of that grouping?
We're a grouping of churches that has not seen color as the descriptor of belonging. So for me, I think my experience of FCC has been a grouping of churches that see every culture as part and parcel of God's call to show his love through not just one language, through not just one nation, but through all the nations coming together, bring their stories together, using each other's experiences to transform communities.
So, given the present situation,
Yeah.
what advice would you offer to FCC? How could we make a response to this kind of situation?
The problem is, everyone's story, when it's hard, it's biased in some sense because of our cultural biases that we have. So, because even within the minority black community, I think there are aspects of how we perceive the West that may not be very healthy. Even within the majority white communities, there are aspects of other people's stories that we do not quite understand. Now, I'll give you an example. I grew up in Uganda, and in Uganda we know the story about Idi Amin. Idi Amin was the guy who expelled the Asians because he woke up one morning after having a dream that the country was prospering because the Asians had left. And one man's action destroyed the family lives of many people, being told in 100 days you have to leave. We still hear the echoes of that bad leadership decision played out in thousands of families across the world. I think it would be great for us as churches to think of better ways of educating each other out of our biases and the prejudices that already exist. So my prayer would be that we could come together and talk about the real issues, the real diverse challenges that we have within our communities. Find out why some folk in the white community struggle to visit a church that has got majority black people, and vice versa. How can we share community together? And for me, the last thing, because I'm a youth minister, the leadership can do a lot, but I think the first leader is the parent. If we can equip our parents within the FCC to think of how they can model the language of community regardless of race, that's the most powerful way of impacting the next generation. Maybe the Formation College can have a dream of making sure that every parent within FCC is equipped with a narrative that is going to make a difference. In 50 years, we'll have a generation of young people that have the same story, and the story that is transforming their community.
Thanks, Doug. Well, as you indicated, 50 years, we've started a journey, but we've got a long way to go. So thank you. Pleasure.